everyone. My name is Amanda, and I'm a clinical psychologist and mental health coach in Naluri. I'm here to talk about red flags, and specifically acknowledging and working on your own red flags. Some of you may have heard of the term red flags before, and it's commonly associated with relationships. If you haven't heard of red flags before, it is a term used to describe warning signs that you should look out for. And this can be in a potential partner, workplace, boss, friend, and so on. The red flags or warning signs can help you to avoid potentially problematic and toxic relationships, or help you to understand that you may need to leave a toxic relationship or situation. As a rule, it helps to notice the red flags and do something about it as soon as you can. However, today I will be sharing more about your own red flags. It is still as important to discover, acknowledge, and change your own red flags to form and maintain better relationships in the future. An example of a red flag that we could have is constantly running late. While some have accepted this as a character trait, it can also portray the image that one is not interested or motivated, has poor time management, or is not reliable. These can result in dissatisfaction in relationships, such as with a spouse or partner, or their bosses and employees, and even their friends. It could lead to breakups, arguments, being reprimanded at work, potentially being fired, or losing your friends. It isn't fair to only take note of and ask others to change their red flags if we aren't taking the steps for our own as well. As we discuss red flags, it's important to note that this can show up in many different areas in our lives, not just in our romantic relationships. The red flags that we may have can cross the boundaries of romantic relationships, friendships, self-worth and esteem, family relationships, professional working relationships, and more. Red flags in social relationships such as friendships, family, and romantic relationships can look like these. Love bombing, when you feel so strongly about someone when you've just known them for a short period of time and you begin to say, "I love you." Feeling extremely jealous of other people in your partner's life. Lashing out or refusing to communicate with your loved ones when they do something you think is wrong. Wanting to please others that you forget your own values. And making excuses for others' unhealthy behaviors. While red flags in working or professional relationships can look like these. Thinking that your colleagues are your competitors and treating them as such, feeling insecure about your abilities, procrastinating, showing up late for work and meetings, missing due dates for projects, and so on. Some other red flags that are not talked about much but can still reveal negative traits are these. You can be overly self-critical. You tend to put yourself or others down. You feel like you don't deserve good things, so you give up easily. And you constantly seek validation and reassurance from others, or you may use social media for this purpose. These red flags are just some examples of the wide variety of warning signs that one could have. You may have already recognized one or two of these in yourself or your relationships. Just from the examples of red flags I shared, I'm sure you can all agree that if anyone has any of these, it should be worked on and addressed, right? However, some of us, and you perhaps, may not even notice that these can cause any issues. I would like you to think about it in this way. When we ignore other people's red flags, we have the potential of staying in a toxic and potentially harmful relationship, either socially or professionally. What happens when we are the ones with the red flags? If you have ever tried to make someone else notice their red flags or negative behaviors, you would probably understand how hard it would be. Now imagine if you do not acknowledge your own red flags. You may be causing these toxic relationships by ignoring that you play a huge role in them. The people around you might have told you about your red flags before, but to no avail because you may not have realized how much they are being affected. You may notice that you constantly have drama and conflict with others, and that somehow you're not really happy no matter what you've done. In fact, one of your red flags could even be trying to fix others instead of noticing your own red flags. You may face difficulties at work just by having a hard time forming good relationships with your colleagues or bosses, or always face a negative review. You may also face difficulties in your personal life, perhaps with recurring arguments with your loved ones, or feeling like the people around you are always telling you to be different and feeling frustrated and confused about this. While these could also be caused by other people's red flags and issues, it would be helpful to acknowledge if you play a role in this and how much of an impact your own red flags may have. Your red flags can impact you in your future too, by limiting your career opportunities if you are unable to do well in your current role, or when your red flags are talked about in the industry. You could face future difficulties in your long-term relationships as well, and you may impact your children's mental health too. There are so many more negative consequences of ignoring your red flags, but I'm here to help you with this today. Now, let's dive into what we can actually do to acknowledge our red flags and change them. The first step in any change is to be mindful. Mindfulness is the practice of being able to observe yourself in an objective manner and be in the present moment. If you are able to be aware of yourself and your behaviors, this will help you to notice your red flags a lot faster. A mindfulness exercise that you can try to increase your awareness is to begin journaling. When you write or log your daily activities and happenings, it helps you to focus more on each day and what you experienced, thought, felt, and did. The more you journal, the easier it becomes for you to be more aware about yourself and the red flags you may be showing others on a daily basis. Another way to practice mindfulness is to use the observing self, which comes from a therapy approach called acceptance and commitment-based therapy. The observing self is a process that requires a bit of practice, but can be a very helpful technique that helps you with mindfulness. To practice this, you can begin by noticing your thoughts and feelings and actions on a regular basis. Once you've got the hang of this, start to be aware that you are noticing your thoughts, feelings, and actions. And finally, be aware that you are able to notice all of this and notice yourself noticing these as you go through your daily life. Essentially, it is like we're observing ourselves without judgment, but only to be aware of ourselves and everything within us. Ooh, that's quite a bit of noticing. It takes time to be aware like this, but I do recommend starting with journaling to make mindfulness a habit first. Next, if you are already starting to be more mindful and can start noticing some of your red flags or potential red flags, you may wonder, are these really red flags, or am I thinking of myself as the villain? A helpful method here would be to ask the people around you. Ask your partner, family, and friends about certain behaviors that you are wondering about. Chances are, they may already have some opinions about the red flags you are wondering about. A good way to ask is to share that you are trying to work on your red flags and you would like to have honest conversations about them to improve. Some of them may even be happy that you are doing this, and it's always a nice feeling to know that people want to help you. Let's say you've noticed these red flags and you've already gotten some opinions from others. It can also be helpful to know why you may have developed some of these behaviors so that it helps you when you're trying to resolve and change them. For example, you may have had a difficult childhood with parents or family members who were not the healthiest role models, which led to learning and replicating some of these behaviors. You may have also had quite traumatic or toxic experiences in the past, which may have shaped your current behaviors as a form of protection so you won't experience that pain and hurt again. But why is it helpful to know this? If you're able to recognize that you have learned these behaviors, it makes it so much easier to accept that you can unlearn them too. If one of your red flags is lashing out at people when you're angry, perhaps it's because you've learned that it's a way to protect yourself when someone in your past took advantage because you were nice. We can then unlearn these behaviors and replace them with healthier behaviors or green flags instead. Let's get into how you can start to change your behaviors. With any habit, we can learn to change them by replacing them with healthier behaviors. For a clear example, I will use something that is about fitness. Imagine that you are currently not doing anything for your fitness routine because you are too busy, but you work in an office and you take the lift every day. One small change that won't take much time is to choose to climb one flight of stairs and take the lift on the next floor. Just by choosing to replace going into the lift on the ground floor but climbing to the first floor to take the lift, you have already changed your behavior in a small but impactful way. Imagine if you continue doing this every day for 2 weeks. You will start to feel like climbing one floor is easy, and maybe you'll start to wonder, what if I climbed 2 floors, then take the lift? Maybe you do, and then you keep increasing that to challenge yourself. You've now built upon that first change because you got used to it just through repeating it enough times. Take that example and think about it in forms of changing other behaviors, such as your speech pattern, choices, and so on. You may think that it's not as easy as changing your fitness or diet, and you're right. It's not as easy, but it's not impossible either. I found that the best way to change is to start as small as possible and work your way from there. So let's take a look at one of the red flags I mentioned earlier. Let's use one that may be more common, which is having difficulty admitting our mistakes. For most of us, it's easier to gloss over our mistakes and move on rather than admitting to them and apologizing or making amends. However, this makes it difficult for others to decide if we're trying to be honest and genuine. Let's take it past the steps of mindfulness and history. Let's say you've already started with mindfulness and noticed that you tend to do this, and you've explored your history and you know why you do this. Now you want to start changing it. Take it slow and start small. Firstly, understand what would be your end goal. Do you want to work up to always admitting your mistakes when they happen? Or do you want to learn to apologize better? Or do you want to learn to be more vulnerable? Whatever your goal, take note that your journey may differ because of it. Let's take the last one. You want to learn to be more vulnerable, instead of closing yourself off and hiding your flaws and mistake. So if this end goal is 100%, what would be the 1% that you can do today? Perhaps something like admitting to a small mistake you made in the past, maybe a tiny error that didn't have much impact, or admitting a mistake to yourself. Now do this over and over again with other tiny mistakes. When you feel a bit more comfortable, work up to slightly bigger mistakes. Then, since your goal is to be more vulnerable, maybe you can talk to someone you trust. About how you feel about your mistakes and why admitting them feels so difficult for you. Maybe one of the next steps is to learn how to express yourself better, so you want to get in touch with your emotions. Perhaps you take the step to go for counseling to address the difficulties you have with your self-confidence and self-esteem. After a while of these small incremental steps, maybe a few months of working on it, you would have made a significant enough change to notice that this is no longer a red flag for you. So see how we start at the very beginning, the tiniest change, and slowly but surely work our way up to a goal that ends up being a green flag, a positive and healthy behavior of being comfortable with your vulnerability and knowing how to express yourself better. Throughout this, you can also ask people around you to keep you accountable, or form a buddy system with someone who's also working on something so that you both can keep each other accountable. Maybe you have a friend who criticizes herself too much, and you want to work on your anger issues. Keep each other on track by checking in and encouraging each other. Although these may sound easy, it really isn't. I'd like to make sure that you understand that it is really difficult to acknowledge your own red flags, let alone change them. We may have been living with these red flags for so long that it will take a long time to change them as well. But please know that if any of the red flags you notice are too severe and are hurting yourself or others, please seek professional help. Going for therapy or counseling can help so much in keeping you accountable for your well-being and changing your own red flags. And you can have a safe space to talk about the difficulties you face as you do this. At the end of the day, just noticing if you have any red flags will help you so much with becoming a better person. So that's a small step you can start with today. Thank you for your time, and I hope that each one of you chooses to make a difference to help yourself grow.